just did the entire introduction on mute, so I'll try again. Morning, everybody. This presentation will be by Tim Pearson. He is a materials and process engineer in the Advanced Operation Engineering Department of Collins Aerospace in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Mr. Pearson graduated from Iowa State University with a bachelor's in material science and engineering in 2012. Tim began his career as a thin films engineer at Texas Instruments and a 300mm wafer lab. His previous role in Collins Aerospace was evaluating and testing new designs for lifetime durability. In his current role, he helps develop new manufacturing processes, troubleshoots production issues, and does root cause analysis of failures. He is a member of SMTA and IPC. His presentation today will be how to go from school to industry and what that transition looks like as a college student and a young professional. So go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Alex. So good morning, everyone. As Alex introduced, I'm Tim Pearson. When Alex asked me to give a presentation about, professional growth, I thought back to, not too long ago, I was in college, and a lot of the times they'd bring in people that either hadn't been in industry or had been in industry for a very, very long time and were well established. And there's not a whole lot of people out there, kind of early in their career to tell you what it's actually like out there right now, what you can do in school to help you learn and gain experience and be able to find a job more easily, and then what to expect once you do find a job and you're early in your career. Some things that I've learned along the way that I've found to be true and helpful, and hopefully you find them helpful as well. Alex can attest, I'm not a very, strict person. But if we can hold any questions to the end, I would appreciate it. Thank you. So here's the agenda for today. Just go over my background a little bit. The introduction was nice. I'll give you some more details about, my background, school, career. Then we'll kind of start in chronological order, college experience, what experiences you can get at college, and then what the heck does networking mean, and what that looks like in school. And then we'll jump to early career, things that you can do to help yourself move up and move up more quickly. And then, what to expect when you're changing companies or even jobs within your own company. Then I'm putting on a big disclaimer at the end that these are just my thoughts and I don't know really what I'm talking about. And then have a little discussion conclusion at the end. So for my background, I'm a native Iowan. I born and grew up in Ankeny, Iowa. Graduated Ankeny High School back when there was only one of them. Went straight into Iowa State in 2007. And if I graduated in December 2012, that means, yes, it did take me 5.5 years to graduate. All done with materials engineering. Had a great time in Ames, learned a lot, grew a lot in Ames, and really kind of shaped, the trajectory of my career. So as Alex said, I started my career at Texas Instruments in Dallas, Texas, as a thin films engineer. We worked in a fully clean room, fully automated 300mm, which is 12 inches for the Englishly inclined. And we were cranking out anywhere from 50 to 70 million chips, computer chips a day out of that factory. So it was a really high volume manufacturing environment. In 2015, I moved back to Iowa and got a job at Rockwell Collins working on advanced interconnects for electronics, and really specialized more on the military hardware of things, making electronics more rugged so that, taking technology from your cell phone and making sure it lasts in every environment is very reliable for 10 to 20 years out in the field. About 3 years ago, I took a different role within Rockwell Collins as advanced materials and operations for Collins Aerospace. And so what my role is now is basically being an expert on call for both the company and then participating with the larger industry as a whole, to move technology forward and to make it more reliable and to improve industry standards in aerospace and defense. So Alex said I'm a member of SMTA and IPC. No one outside of our business knows what those are, but it's just it's like any other industry spec, industry committee. You'll have any industry will have a governing standards and committees that write those standards, and I'm one of those people for the aerospace and defense electronics people. So school, I spent a lot of time at Iowa State and did a lot while I was there. And I would say there's quite a few things that you can do at school to broaden your experience. One of the best things I ever did was study abroad. I even worked for the study abroad department saying how important it was and how good it was for my growth as just a person. It really gives you a different perspective of different cultures. It makes it not as intimidating to think about moving overseas if your company would like you to. It opens opportunities for global companies and for people to move abroad. I personally know of a couple people I studied abroad with who now live in Germany, France, and England, working for companies over there, and they've generally had a very positive experience about it. And I've had a couple of them tell me they didn't think they would ever move overseas until they lived abroad and studied abroad. So it's a great opportunity. It is expensive. A lot of people are always like, "Well, I can't afford it," and I I understand, but from a worth it perspective, I don't regret a single penny I spent um, studying abroad. The next thing I did was early on in my career. I came into college thinking I'm going to get my master's in 5 years, and then I'm going to go get my PhD and become a professor. And then I did undergraduate research. So it was a good experience. Got to work for a really brilliant professor, and I got exposed to kind of the academia side of things and learned it was not for me. So after about a year of doing undergraduate research, I started saying, maybe I need to start rethinking my 5 year plan and look at a different 5 year plan. And that's when I went and got my first co-op experience. Now, my first co-op experience is actually with the group I'm working for now in advanced operations, and we are just doing the grunt work. And it's actually the job Alex has right now. He's doing my grunt work now. So I got a co-op experience, and at first I was worried about the co-op because it's taking a semester off. It pushed back my graduation date. A lot of people are hesitant about that, but I'm so glad I accepted it because for most internships, by the time you kind of figure out what's going on, the summer's already over and you're back to school and you've learned a lot, but you really haven't contributed. But with a co-op, at the end of your 3 months, you've still got another 4 to 5 months of actually doing the work, getting to work on more long-term projects, getting more experience, and actually building your resume. So don't be afraid to move your graduation date out. Um, I can tell you from personal experience, 5th year names, great. 6th year, you start feeling pretty old around names. So um, don't be afraid of the victory lap. It's not as bad as it sounds, and the experience you get from internships and co-ops is worth a lot more than shaving a semester off your graduation date. Um, the other big takeaway from the looking at school is when you're a senior, look back at the freshman and realize how much you've grown, because college is really at the time of your biggest growth. You come in, you think you know everything, and by the time you leave, you don't know anything, but somehow you're better for it. So it's really think of school as a time of growth, even though you don't realize it's happening. Um, the collection of experiences you have from doing different things, being involved in different clubs and activities, really helps you grow as a person and figures out it helps you figure out what you want to do with your career. I've got friends that moved to undergraduate research and are now doing postdocs all over the country, and they couldn't be happier. And I've got friends that went straight into industry, like myself, and are super happy with it too. So it's all about figuring out what you want to pursue, and changing your major to pursue that is not the end of the world. It may add some time, it may add some cost, but you've got the rest of your life to work. So make sure that it's something that you really want to do. Networking. So I remember in school, I was a part of Material Advantage, and we'd go to conferences like MS&T, Material Science and Technology Conference, and everyone was putting this big emphasis on networking, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And you'd go to all these lectures, and you'd go to these papers, and you'd learn, and you'd go to mixers and try to talk to professors from different colleges, and it never seemed to really be a benefit, and I always thought people were crazy. So what I've learned from being in industry now is that networking is more about who you get to know in school and who you keep in touch with personally and professionally. So I worked for some professors. I still keep in touch with them on a somewhat regular basis, usually reaching out once a year or finding something that they taught me that I'm actually applying in the real world. So keeping in touch with them, but also keeping in touch with your friends, because you would be surprised how many different places your friends end up working. I've got friends that work, so bear in mind I'm a materials engineer, so I've got friends that work at Nike working on foams for shoes. I didn't know that was a job, but I've got a friend doing it. I've got another friend that became, didn't like doing engineering, became a manager at Boeing, worked her way up the ranks pretty quickly. She was a director by the time she was 27. And then Amazon came over, and now she's the head of Amazon's drone delivery program research, which, if you would have told me that was a career, I would have thought you're crazy back in 2012. But sure enough, she's out there, and those are your friends. And they end up in places that you don't really think about, but they're the ones that help you find jobs. From my first co-op experience, I became close friends with a guy from North Dakota State University. He graduated before me because I took 6 years to graduate. But he was the one who helped me get my first job at TI. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about networking. It is about who you know, but you'd be surprised about who it is that you know that is going to be helpful in the future. So transition, finding a job. People are like, yeah, just go find a job. Super easy. By the way, I found some old embarrassing pictures of me. This is while I was in college. Only one I could find with me with the suit on. But I just love my hair in that picture. It's short now. But finding a job is not easy. Contrary to what people will tell you, it takes a lot of work. You should really treat a job search like a full-time job, especially when you're looking for full-time work. Internships and co-ops, yes, go to the career fair, apply, talk to people. Hopefully you can find internships and co-ops. But when it comes to your full-time career, take it really seriously. Start thinking about it about a year before you graduate. And then it always just takes longer than you think it should. For whatever reason, HR is just super slow about getting back to people, processing applications. You apply, at the career fair, but they've got 6 more weeks of career fairs across the country before they close, they collect all the resumes and get back to people. So when you apply to a job and you don't hear back for 6 weeks, that's not because they've just blown you off. It's just because it just takes longer for big companies to get back to you than you think it reasonably should. I doubled that slide. Treat finding a job like a job itself. So be organized when you're applying for jobs as well. I had a big spreadsheet of every company I applied to, as well as every position at each company, and I tailored my resume for each job that I applied to. It took a lot more work and a lot more effort, but it tells who's ever on the other side, which I'm looking at resumes right now for next semester. It tells me that someone took the time to really actually look at the job and was serious enough about it to put in some extra effort to look at that specific job versus just blasting the same resume out to everyone. First job's not the dream job. Unfortunately, very few people land their dream job when they first start out. It's okay. And in the current climate, a job is a job. So it doesn't just because that's not where you want to be long term doesn't mean you shouldn't take a job, but it should mean you should always try to find something to learn at that job that will help you grow in the future. This is one I get from a lot of college students that are now looking for full-time work is, well, I've got 3 internships and co-ops, so I have a year and a half worth of experience. I should negotiate my salary to be higher than what other new grads without experience are doing. Unfortunately, that's not really a reality for most large companies. Anyone with a HR department and generally has a policy that new college grads always get the same base. They've just got a number that comes out of whatever HR policy, but it's not negotiable. It's not always fair, but it's policy. So just be aware that if you get stonewalled, when you try to negotiate when you're first coming out of school, there's a lot of times nothing the hiring manager can do. Now, once you're in, there's a lot you can do to move up quickly, but we'll get to that in the next few slides. Also, do some basic research in the companies you apply to. I was guilty of not doing this and had no idea what Rockwell Collins built when I started working there, and it took me probably 6 months to figure it out. But if you go into the interview with some knowledge of what the company does, even from a high level, if you're not sure how the position you're applying for impacts that, you can always ask that in the interview. But as long as you have some basic understanding of what the company is and what they make, it really benefits. It's to your benefit during interviews. So early career, there's a good picture of me in the clean room at TI, full bunny suit, class 100 clean room. So if you get a job, congratulations. What now? So first thing is, school really doesn't teach you much about how your job is going to work. What school teaches you is the way to think. So most companies don't expect you to come in and be ready to blow the doors off the place and fix all their problems with, differential equations. Rule of thumb for most places is on-the-job training takes 6 to 12 months to figure it out. So you've got some time to figure it out. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes either. We see this a lot with young professionals coming in, is they're so afraid of making a mistake that they won't do anything. And they don't apply critical thinking. They don't try different things. Just the second they run into a roadblock, they need a hand holding. And that's not the impression you want to make in your first year of work, is always running to have someone else fix problems. That being said, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just use your brain, try some things out first. If I have a young engineer come to me and say, oh, I have this problem, my first question is, what did you try? And if the answer is nothing, I'll say, go try something. Try to figure it out. You're an engineer. Before, always coming around and having someone else fix your problems for you. The other thing to do is start, after you've kind of established yourself, start looking around at your mentors and your bosses. So at TI, I kind of looked around at the older guys at work, and a lot of them were, either stressed out or just, constantly, wound up, or they had kind of just been broken down by drudgery and just didn't care anymore. And I didn't really want to be either one of those people. Then I kind of looked at my boss and I said, do I want to do his job? And I thought to myself, no, that looks worse than what I'm doing now. And then I looked at his boss and I said, well, what about his job? Do I want his job in the future? And I said, no, it's not really what I want. And so when I didn't see a career growth from where I was, that's kind of when mentally I shifted to, okay, maybe this isn't a long-term solution for me. Maybe I should start looking at other roles. So I reached out and I started talking to other people in different parts of the company, and once I found out that my management structure didn't want me to leave where I was, it started being time to look outside of the company for a better opportunity for what I wanted. Now, just because I ended up moving on from TI because I didn't see growth, I still joke that I got 10 years worth of experience in 3 while I was working there because I learned a ton and it really made me a better engineer in the long term. The other thing I learned at TI was how to manage your manager. So there were a lot of other new college grads in the factory that I worked at, and a lot of them needed that hand holding and being constantly told, you know, what was priority, what tasks need to be done. But within the first 6 months, once I kind of had established what I was doing and I kind of understood everything, I started managing my manager by simply just making a quick little project list of all the projects I was working on, what status they were, and, and what priority they were. And then once every 2 weeks, I'd send that off to my manager and say, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's my priorities. Has anything?" 90% of the time, he said, "Nope, good job, thanks, Tim." And what that also did was it made his job easier when it came to performance review time because he had a list of everything I had worked on, done, and accomplished from every 2 week period throughout the year. So when he went into the office of his boss to argue for raises, I made his job easier to fight for me. So always learn to manage your manager, understand what their needs are, and the easier you make their life, the easier it is on you. So they're less involved with your day-to-day tasks, and they're well informed of what you're doing, and they can help you move up faster. The other thing that I didn't get to do at TI that I'm able to do now is get involved with your industry if possible. Every industry has conferences and committees and standards bodies that work on different things related to your industry. And if your organization is willing to send you, it is by far the best career growth that I've gotten in my career. I get to work with, some of the smartest people in the industry and work with them on improving our industry as a whole, but also that's where your actual networking comes in. So that's where professionally, that kind of networking is actually the best for your career. You now know people in your industry that are technical as well, and then they're the ones you call when you need help or when you need a job. The other big thing that I got as personal advice when I moved down to Dallas, I didn't know anyone in Dallas when I moved there. Born and raised in Iowa, didn't know about Texas, didn't think I'd like it. One of my friends who had been in an industry for a few years pulled me aside and said, "Hey, it really takes 18 months to get yourself established in a new city." And by gosh, was that not the truth? At a year, I thought, "Oh, after a year, I'm social. I'll have tons of friends." Nope. After a year, I was just like, "Man, I just don't have anybody to hang out with and nothing to do. I don't know if I can take it." And then by 18 months, for whatever reason, I was established. I had stuff going on every day of the week. It just takes time because you're not surrounded by everyone's the same age, so many people with shared interests. It takes time in new cities to develop. And the other thing that was really a big difference was you have money now. And having money is really nice, but it takes a while to figure out your budget because after moving and then you get your first paycheck and you've got to pay off, moving costs and, do I need to actually buy a new mattress? Just adult things. But the first 6 months is where you should really pay attention to how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, and also spend some time really looking at your benefits, your 401k, all the adulting stuff is what we call it. Taxes, spending time to figure those out is worth it in the long run because the more you can save in early in your career will help you later in your career, help you retire earlier. That sounds like a long way off, and it still sounds like a long way off to me, but I'm glad I spent the time figuring that out and getting a budget set. So after you've been established and in your early career as your first job. The reality is, after 2008, raises and promotions went substantially down in percentages, and they really haven't recovered since. So even when there were good economic times, getting a raise internally within your current career is just not a easy way to move up. It's faster and gets you paid more to move positions and often to move companies. There's a lot of older generations that see this as a negative, but it's been the reality for 10 years, and the millennials like myself are doing it, have done it. I've done it. I spent 2.5 years at TI, 3 years in my previous role, and now I finally ended up in a position where I really see it as my full-time career position. Now, I put the little asterisk there that companies are starting to catch on to this. And so for really high performers, they are trying to move them up faster because they don't want to lose their talent. So if you make yourself valuable, depending on what company you work for, they are catching on, and you can start using that as, hey, I really like it here. I don't want to leave, but there's more money available out there. That's been true for the past 10 years or so. COVID hit, and now things are a little bit tougher. So once we get on the other side of COVID, this is going to be more applicable to your guys' career. Be gracious, don't burn bridges. When I left TI, it was, for a lot of personal reasons, I didn't enjoy my job there, but I thanked them for the learning opportunity and just said, I'll, in the future, if I want to come back, I can. I have no plans to, but that don't burn the bridges unless you're really sure. Always kind of have a goal in mind. So I've always kind of had a 5-year plan, and now that 5-year plan changes every year almost. But anytime you look for a new position, you should kind of have a goal in mind of where you want to be in your career and see how that position, whether even if it's kind of a lateral move, how new experience and learning new things can help you move closer to your goal. Always be open to new opportunities. So when I moved back to Iowa, it was because an old mentor called me and said, hey, there's a different group here that's hiring, and I think you'd be good for the job, and you should go apply. So I looked at it, and it was something I wasn't familiar with, but I applied and got it. So always be open to those new opportunities. And then keep in touch with your old colleagues. You never know where they'll end up and what opportunities they can have for you. So that goes back to keep your network around. The picture on the bottom right is actually the factory at TI after I turned in my badge on my last day. Excuse me. So here's the grain of salt. This is just based on my experience. I've only worked for large corporations, so TI, Rockwell Collins, and now we've been acquired by UTC and then merged with Raytheon. So I've only really worked for large companies. So keep that in mind. I've heard from a lot of friends that smaller companies are a lot more flexible. But also keep in mind that I entered the workforce in 2012 when the economy had pretty much recovered from the 2008 collapse, and so there were plenty of jobs. So all of my career has been during a generally good economy. I understand that the economic situation and the situation you guys are entering into your early career is very different right now. I'm hoping it'll recover fast, but I know a lot of people in 2008 when I was in school that were graduating had no options available. So a lot of them just went to grad school just to bide time. So keep in mind that that's an option and one a lot of people before you have taken. And then just a quote from my favorite book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Be a filter, not a sponge. Filter out anything that you think is good information that you can take away from this, but don't take everything from my word. So just a general discussion, the more diversity of experience you can expose yourself to in school, the more friends you make, the more likely that you can find a career that's satisfying in the long term. It's always good to have a plan, but plans can and often will change along the way. I work with a lot of old people in industry, and if you talk to 100 of them and you ask them the question, was your career path the way you planned it? 99% of them will say, no, it went very different, but I'm glad the way it turned out. No matter where you are, even if you're not super happy with it, always keep learning. You can always improve yourself, always add more skill sets to make yourself more valuable in the future. And understand that I'm 31. I've been in industry for 8 years now. I'm still figuring a lot of this stuff out. So don't be afraid to understand that you don't know everything and that you can always keep learning. So that's all I had for today. I put my email on here, so if you have other questions after this session's over, you can shoot me an email. I have co-ops at 4 to 6 co-ops a year that I mentor. It's a big part of my job. It's part of my job that I like. I like talking to college students and giving advice. So if you have any other questions or concerns, shoot me an email at there. So that's all I had for today. So I will be happy to stick around for 19 minutes and answer any questions you have.
If you have any questions, you can throw them in the Q&A or you can ask me directly and I'll let Tim know.
So Alex, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the question and answer pop up. So yeah, if you see any that come up, just if you could read it out for me.
Okay.
There is an option just to put all the questions in the all panelists category.
One of the questions from Elizabeth is, what's one thing on a resume that you think always stands out?
One thing on a resume that always stands out. Relevant work experience, and then also just if you haven't had relevant work experience, showing that you can work. So one of our best workers, we ended up hiring because A, they interviewed well, but B, he worked concrete construction for 5 years. If you work concrete construction for 5 years, I know you can work. It doesn't always have to be the smartest person, but just someone that actually knows how the value of hard work. So I don't discount people that have had service jobs. I've been a waiter. I know what it takes to be a waiter. But yeah, just your work experience. One thing that a lot of people put on their resumes that I don't think helps is relevant coursework. Unless you were doing design work that was more related to something in industry, we kind of know by your major what your coursework is, and we kind of have an expectation of that you understood those things. So, but yeah, I just say work experience is the thing that we look at the most, or I look at the most. But then also, please have people review your resumes for typos. You'd be surprised how many come in with typos.
One other question is, how do you include soft skills in resume?
Soft skills. So we kind of have to imply soft skills. Soft skills on resume are hey, I volunteer at, this church group, or I interact with the public in this way. If you're out there, in your extracurriculars is where you kind of imply that you have those soft skills. If you're a leader in a club, that's something that takes soft skills. That takes dealing with people. Like when I was a choreographer for Dub H, which I'm still very proud of, and I think it's still on my resume. But dealing with all of the drama of people and trying to lead them into doing something as simple as a coordinated choreographed dance is a lot harder than it looks, and that kind of communicates your leadership skills, um, people skills, soft skills. It's implied by putting your extracurricular activities on there, and that's why those are important on your resume.
Another question is from Sarah. It says, is it hard to get hired at a company that makes different products / is in a different industry than the current company you work at?
Yes, but the best time to do it's early in your career. If you started a job, thank you. That's a good question. I was meant to hit on, but if you're in an industry that you think you don't want to be in long term, the best time to get out is early in your career because it is hard to start over. My brother's going through this right now. He works at a nuclear power plant that is shutting down, and he's been in the nuclear power industry for the past 15 years. And he's a mechanical engineer by trade, and he's applying for other mechanical engineering jobs, but he would have to start over almost back to new college level in a different industry. So he's kind of stuck in the nuclear industry, um, just based on, you know, your current pay. You really, it is difficult. It is a step back to restart in a different industry. So the best time to get out is early on.
Looks like there is another question, but I don't think for. Oh, okay, here it is. Um, so Connor Sullivan is currently looking for a full-time job, and he's encountered questions prompting him for a minimum required salary. And are there any suggestions for choosing that?
I didn't know that was a thing, but I
I
would.
think sometimes when you do applications, it asks you.
So based on your major, based on where they're located, I would just turn to Google. What's industry average, and um, HR has those resources too. They've got better numbers than even Google does for that area, for that type of, so if you're a mechanical engineer looking to move out to Seattle, the I would guess Seattle's a high cost of living area. I'm guessing new college grads out there are anywhere from $85,000 to $90,000. But Google's your friend. Most HR policies have that set number based off of cost of living, position type. So their expectation is going to be right around what the industry average is for that area. Um, Depending on skill level. So like uh, it used to be when I graduated, oil and gas and semiconductor paid the best. I bet semiconductor still does, but oil and gas I think in, is struggling right now. But just look at the um, areas that you're applying, and at that engineering level specific or science level specific, Google should have a pretty good number for baseline expectations for you.
All right, if there's any last call for questions, now would be the time to do it. I'll wait around just for a little bit longer. Do you have any interview tips? That's a question from Sarah.
Relax, but also don't be humble. It's your chance to really sell yourself, and don't sell yourself short, because someone else will sell themselves better. Um, the people on the other side of the table are just people. They're normal. Treat them like not quite as friendly as your friends, but just understand that they're not there to, you know, judge you super harshly. Just relax. And the biggest thing that I find really good in interviews is really understanding and talking about what you know. So if you were really, if you did a really good project and you did a deep dive on something, and you were really excited about it, that's where in an interview that comes across really strongly. Is, hey, this person has did something, had a real interest in it, and understands it, and can talk about it, and can answer questions about it. So be yourself, relax, and talk about what you know. Oh, and for phone interviews, when you're done answering their questions, stop talking. There's going to be awkward silence on the other end of the line, and especially with COVID, with all the virtual interviews, that all they're doing is taking notes, and it takes a while for interviewers to write notes on your response. So be okay with uncomfortable silence on phone interviews.
Are there any further questions? All right, seeing no further questions, thank you, Tim, for taking the time to present today. I really appreciate it, and I know everybody that attended will benefit from it. If you guys would like to contact Tim for any further questions, he has his email right there. I also added it to the conference schedule next to his presentation link. The next sessions will start at 11:10, so be sure to hop on over there for them. We have a lot of great sessions lined up, but for now, thank you again, Tim, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.